Teachers who regularly get invited to high school reunions. What are the most amazing transformations, common patterns, epic stories, saddest declines, etc. you've seen through the years? In high school I was pretty good friends with a guy that was a bit overweight. About 6 feet 4 inches. Really smart and a bit nerdy. Lost track of him after high school but saw him at our 10-year reunion. He was the talk of the reunion. Still tall. Lost all the weight and was in great shape. Had long hair like Fabio and was a doctor. He showed up with a beautiful wife. He gave us his contact info and invited us to Atlanta to stay with him in his huge house. After the reunion I tried to get in touch. Contact info didn't work. And through some sleuthing I found out he was neither married nor a doctor. He was still in good shape. Can't fake that. But faked everything else. A previous student of mine grew up in a horrible home situation. This individual was really smart and I did my best to help them apply, receive many scholarships and grants, and eventually went to an Ivy League school to get away from their abusive home life. They made it big, and I mean big, big-time millionaire. Made their family jealous, but in the end their hard work paid off. It was great to see and I was so proud of what they'd become. Do teachers get to go to high school reunions? That seems like a recipe for finding out if the English teacher really did have a dolphin tramp stamp. Again, I am not a teacher but a 35-year-old. I went to high school in Venezuela. I left the country when I was 17 and never saw any of them until what you might call a virtual reunion on Facebook a few years back. The reason I got to even know they had a group, the guy everyone knew bullied me, was shot and killed by his best friend at the time. Apparently he kept being a bastard after graduating, and thus that was the end result. Besides that, most of my classmates moved from the country due to the crisis. Those who stayed are having a bad time, like everyone else in the country. It is weird seeing them in Facebook in random countries and doing things which I would never expect from them as a teen. One is a cook in Sweden. Other is an MMA fighter in California. One is an accountant in Australia. Plenty have middle class lives in other South American countries. Simply interesting. Currently a student in this situation. Had all the former graduates from the year prior come home. One kid, who used to drive me to school, started his own company out of his dorm and hit it big. Household name within a year. Guy ended up dropping out soon after. One of the nicest guys I know. Shout out to you, Nick. A former student of mine grew up in an ultra-conservative Christian home. He and his siblings were never allowed to socialize with other students during lunch and recess. Whenever they had free time at school, they had to read their Bibles. In science class, they were forbidden to learn about evolution. Every essay, short story, personal narrative, and poem he wrote for me involved some kind of Christian theme. When he graduated, he immediately enrolled in a big seminary in our area, and that was the last I heard of him until his class invited me to their 10-year reunion. This same kid showed up with sleeve tattoos, piercings everywhere, slamming beer after beer after beer and smoking like a locomotive. When I asked what he was doing now, he responded he currently was a bouncer at a strip club. In my high school they used some of the class reps as volunteers in order to organize this 10-year meeting. My at that time class master told me that a super good-looking woman, she was 29 back then, I was 17, and damn, she was top 3 woman I've ever seen in my life. Was one of the dirtiest students she ever had. She would not shower for days, and at some point she was out of school for a week or so because she got a really bad infection from her period and lack of showers. Also one of the smartest guys from that generation, who went to veterinary school, was convicted for selling some sort of animals drugs to people and used some on himself. He seemed super normal, but when he spoke you could tell that there were some clicks in his brains that were not connecting at all. Losing the idea in the middle of the sentence. Couldn't keep the voice at the same tone for more than 10 seconds. Going from whispering to shouting and stuff. Not a teacher, but just wanted to give a shout out to the girl that's gonna win our high school reunion next year. In HS, she was super quiet and, well, she was a bigger girl. She was tall too, so it all compounded together. She'd try to shy away from any limelight, but that was hard when she was like 8 inches taller than the rest of us. Anyway, she's lost like 80 pounds in the last couple of years. Found a hairstyle that suits her so well. She would wear it long, and has just really hit her stride. I want to say something, but I'm trying to maintain my total bitch status from HS, so I'm not going to. Kidding. I just don't want to be that person that comments on weight even though I know she worked hard for it and probably wants people to say something. Not a teacher, but there was a guy who was the stereotypical jock in high school. Very unemotional, stoic, etc. Then he went into the military and got PTSD. Now he is a hippie and psychotherapist. A frustrating thing as a teacher is not being able to remember all the kids you've taught. I've taught roughly 150 kids a year for 15 years. So it becomes hard to remember specific things about every student. I feel like AD back when a kid who really enjoyed my class comes up and asks me questions about life or the class she was in and I can't remember much about it. I found that I usually remember high-achieving, creative students or kids who are badly behaved, as I have a soft spot for these kids. Since I usually remember the badly behaved kids, I have noticed that most of them figured it out by the time they reach 30. Most have great jobs and are well-adjusted. Conversely, many of the high-achieving students end up dropping out of college and are working low-wage jobs. I don't believe that high school is much of an indicator of future success. As long as you graduate high school and attempt college, how you performed in high school will not be that important. It never occurred to me that teachers could also go to a high school reunion. I've skipped my reunions because I still talked to the people I cared about from there. So I didn't see a point. However, there are definitely teachers I would love to catch up with now that I'm older. But then again, they might not teach there anymore, so it might not even be worth it. Would it be weird to reach out to them on Facebook or LinkedIn? I'm pretty sure I wasn't invited to my high school reunion. Probably for the best, since I'm not where I want to be in life. But the silver lining is that it's getting better. Secretly hoping that I can roll up on these bitches in 2027. Do these actually exist? I always thought it was just an American TV thing. I am 32 and I have 2 older siblings. None of us have ever received anything from our high school once we graduated. Who the fuck would want to party with the people you went to high school with? I was a huge asshole in high school to all of my teachers and was a regular in detention. I even pissed one teacher off so bad that he exploded and told me I would never amount to anything in life. He was also my volleyball coach, so I got on his nerves often. After high school I was planning on joining the military to try to find direction in life, but applied for college instead since my grades were half decent. Got into Penn State and joined ROTC and am now a graduate of an aerospace engineering degree and attending pilot training as a second lieutenant. Went back to visit and that teacher was shocked. I wasn't invited to my 20-year high school reunion, which seems totally appropriate. Not a teacher who gets invited to reunions. But one of the more popular kids in my graduating class ended up bypassing college and getting hooked pretty bad on hard drugs. Probably heroin. Given the stories, seemed to have gotten a little better. And we thought he was clean, and then one day a few years ago his heart gave out. He was only 33. Not a teacher, but interesting nonetheless. The valedictorian of my graduating class lost his full ride to state college after 2 quarters because of drinking and drugs. He grew up in a protected and very strict household. Once he left and got exposed to the temptations of life, he didn't know how to handle it. Last I heard, he's working odd jobs and is bumming around our hometown. I'm not a teacher but an athletic coach for high school girls. After 20+ years of coaching, I've only ever heard of 2 of them to become exotic dancers. Not a teacher, but was at school with one girl. Very geeky, very exuberant. She was in all the school drama productions, and she would tell everyone that she was going to be a famous actress someday. We were like, yeah, whatever. No one from little old New Zealand ever cracks that level of fame these days. She's been a female lead in a number of movies now, alongside people like Woody Harrelson, Ewan McGregor, Courtney B. Vance, Mark Rylance, to name a few. I actually got to be on stage with her in a school production. So she is my ticket into 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. 8 of my 438 student graduating class, 2009, have passed from opioid overdose. The reunion is this July. I'm currently a high schooler right now and reading all of these comments. It's crazy to think that so much can change in such a short amount of time. It also seems that for the people who try to be popular in high school ends up being the highlight of their life. And it all falls apart from there. I need to keep that in mind, I guess. At one school reunion, I came across a former student in his 50s, became a radio shock jock millionaire in New York, with what I thought was his daughter. She wasn't. I later learned he got fired over some angry tweets, or something TSS. I taught the famous guitarist John Mayer. After 10 years he enters the reunion by busting down the double doors. Everybody was excited and shocked to see him this year. Then he climbs up on the tables and says, "You will know what all this time was for." I still don't know what that means to this day, but it seemed rehearsed. I was caught off guard, but I just went with it. Great guy nonetheless. Former student who was a decent kid who tried, just not the brightest, graduated, got a job at Whataburger. Got fired because he kept showing up late. His manager was his monsieur. I honestly didn't know teachers came to high school reunions. I went to my 10-year one a couple years back and never even considered that a former teacher would be there. It was a blast. By the way, considering the event turned into a whole kegger and I was peer pressured into trying to get me to do one of those upside down things where you drink from the keg. I didn't. I feel like I'd be oddly uncomfortable with a former teacher being there, even though we're all adults at that point.
Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe to support the channel.